Welcome, everybody, to our live stream. It is Friday, and you'll never believe what's going on here in Nashville. It is snowing. I'm not kidding you. It is snowing. I mean, we had, 60 degrees a couple of days ago, and it's snowing today. I don't think it's going to accumulate. Pam Case joins me. She is our senior producer for the Huckabee Show. She'll be reading your questions, and we hope to get to a lot of them today. We have a pile of stuff to dig through. We want you to send your questions in the chat. Send a super chat for more visibility. We'll try to make sure that our moderators who are watching the chat for questions get as many to us as is humanly possible. Were you surprised by the snow?
Well, you know, I used to be married to a weatherman, so I have some internal little gauges that go off. But
okay.
No, I was kind of surprised today.
Well, I read it in the
33 degrees out
forecast,
there.
but I didn't believe it. I thought, it's not really going to do that. But
Welcome to 2023.
Yeah, but it's not going to stick. It's not going to make life miserable, I hope.
No, typical Tennessee.
Yeah.
It's always a surprise.
Everything will close, and everybody will run to the store and get milk and bread, even if they have milk and bread, or they don't even use milk and bread. Yeah. And the shelves will be empty, and tomorrow, everything will be back to normal.
Yes, exactly right.
Well, the House GOP has come out of the gate pretty strong after the speaker fight got settled. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Joe Biden's document debacle, and we'll talk about his border visit as well. We've got a pre-show poll as we try to do each Friday. Pam is the only one whose eyes get to take a look at that. I have no idea what it was or where it's going. So, Pam, what is our pre-show poll showing us?
All right. Is Biden being set up for the classified documents? Okay, 50%. Okay, 50% are saying yes, and the Dems, 50% of the Dems are saying they don't want him to run in 2024. So there you go.
Interesting.
And you know who said no? The other 50%.
Yeah, that's a pretty evenly divided poll. That's unusual.
Yes,
typically,
very much
they weigh
so.
heavily one way or the other.
Yeah, well, here we go.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you're somewhat of a conspiracy theorist if you think that this is sort of being engineered to keep Joe from running. But having seen what I've seen the past few years, doesn't surprise me a bit. And I don't think it's so far out there to be unbelievable. I think it's quite credible to say that there are people tinkering with the structures to make it so that whether Joe Biden decides, I don't want to keep doing this, or whether he's somehow incapacitated politically. We know he's incapacitated mentally.
Careful now.
I am trying to not cross that line. But, I mean, watch his speeches, and you know that something's not quite all right. He's still shaking hands with ghosts and saying things that don't make any sense. So I think one way or another, there's an attempt to say, we got to find somebody else because this guy can't win.
Well, and I'll tell you, with the left media kind of diving in this week and watching how that's played out, interesting.
Well, it is, because we're seeing something we haven't seen in his entire presidency or in his campaign. You've got the left-wing media, CNN, MSNBC, and New York Times and others who are actually covering this story about the documents. And typically they would have ignored it and pretended it never happened.
Right. Well, they didn't have any choice, quite frankly. But
it is hard.
Yeah, now, you can't hide from that.
They didn't have a choices in other things, but they did it anyway. Hey, if you enjoy watching this show, be sure and do us a favor. But do yourself a favor, too. Hit the like button. If we get to 1,500 likes before the end of the stream, it just helps boost all of our capacity to tell you about the programs in the YouTube algorithm. So that way, this video gets shown to more people. That's why I say it's good for us, it's good for you. So smash that button, hit it, like it, like it, like it. We want 1,500 or more today. If you've not already subscribed to our channel, it's real simple. Push the button. That's how you do it. Hit the notification bell so we can let you know when we're going to be doing these kind of special activities. Every week, we try to look back and pick a comment from the previous week. This one comes from Steve, who said, and I quote, "When will this horrible government ever do one thing to help its own citizens? Oh, I've got it. Never," end quote. Steve, I think you've got it 100% correct. Government is seemingly more in business to make sure that they are preserved in power rather than the average citizen is benefited from the actions of our government. We never should let them forget they work for us. It is not the other way around. Well, just as you gave us a great quote, I've got a question for you. I'd love to get your response. Is Joe Biden being treated differently than Donald Trump in regards to the classified documents being found? Love to get your responses, so leave your answers in the chat, or you can do it in the comments section below. All right, let's get to one of the big stories of the week has been, I guess, really the story of my daughter's being sworn in as governor of the state of Arkansas.
Yeah.
I was telling Pam before we went on air that this has been a crazy, just whirlwind of a week from the time I got back
Last weekend.
last Saturday. I mean, I didn't come up for air until basically I got on the flight to come here and do the show this weekend. But it was an extraordinary experience.
I want to bring this up if I could, Gov. We've already had someone write in to you today, Jerry Thomas. He said, I was there in 1996, your 13-year-old daughter, watching you become governor as you faced a historic capital crisis. Tuesday, you watched her become governor facing a national crisis, and he wants to know how that made you feel.
Well, I was overwhelmed with emotion, particularly at the moment at which she took the oath. When we were in the House chamber and she was being administered the oath by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, that's when I think it really hit me. I mean, I'd been to activities, obviously I'm quite aware of all the things going on, but I think it sunk in when her hand is up in the air. Her hand, this is an interesting little piece of trivia that most people won't know. Her hand was on a Bible that I got for Janet in 1973 in Jerusalem. My very first trip to Israel, July of 73. We were dating at the time, not quite married, be a year before we married. So I bought her this Bible and brought it back, gave it to her. She carried it in our wedding in 1974. And then Sarah carried it in her wedding when she got married. But in between that, it was the Bible that I was sworn in on in all of my swearings in, twice for lieutenant governor and 3 times as governor. And so it was a pretty special thing. And I didn't realize she was going to use that Bible until we were in the holding room just before the swearing in. And I looked and I thought,
looks familiar.
Whoa, how cool is this?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, whoever's responsible for keeping up with this better not lose it.
Yeah.
But that was pretty special. But when the oath was administered, and, you know, then she gets the official congratulations from the Chief Justice and the applause starts. That's when I realized how real this really was. And I thought, that little kid that used to run around the Capitol following me around is now the governor of the state.
Yes. First female governor for Arkansas.
Yep.
But as a dad, my heart is like, wow. So proud.
It was just amazing. And of course, you know, it's great to have people come up saying, oh, we're so proud of your daughter, and I know you are. And I was always tempted to say, no, not really, no big deal.
Not a big deal.
Never have done that. Like, oh, what's up? But it was a great moment. And, you know, our family was excited. But I think to see the excitement of so many people who had supported her, prayed for her. The day of the swearing in, Zach Williams, very well-known Grammy Award-winning Christian artist, her favorite artist, did a prayer service and they performed. All of the musicians and singers and everything were all Arkansas natives. Joe Nichols from the country music world, Justin Moore, Colin Ray.
Yes.
So that was very cool. Yeah. It was just a great day. And, you know, I'm excited for her. And I tell you, she's off to a great start. In her very first day, I mean, the ink had hardly dried on her official papers when she already declared an executive order that banned critical race theory in public schools, and that was a good start. She also said that the state government would not use nor recognize the term Latinx because it's hated by the Hispanic and Latino community. I don't know who came up with that stupid word that isn't a word. And they kind of hoisted it upon the Hispanic community as if they were going to like it. And less than 3% of the Hispanic community has any affinity for it at all. I mean, that was a boneheaded thing to do. So she said, we're not going to call it that. By the way, that to me, that sounds like every time I see the word, I'm thinking it's some kind of fabric that people wear to hold in their abdomen. Okay. I think Spanx, Latinx, it sounds like that to me.
Okay.
There.
Well, with that.
So good reason to ban it. There you go.
There you go.
End of that. All right. I want to touch upon very sad news. Diamond of Diamond and Silk. You probably know her as Diamond and not her real name, who was, trying to think of her first name, Hardaway, Rochelle Hardaway. No, that was her sister.
Yes, Linnell. Mm-hmm.
Linnell. And Lynette?
Lynette.
Lynette.
It's Lynette.
Anyway, I just knew her as Diamond. And she's been on our show, and we loved having her. They were both so much fun and just delightful. She passed away this past week, and we were all just heartsick over it. There were many rumors floating about that it was a COVID-related. We have learned that they have been adamant saying it was not COVID-related, and there have been some people who have pushed that out. But the family has been very clear that it was not a COVID death. So it doesn't matter how she died. The fact that she passed away is what's sad.
Yeah, so very shocking. For sure.
And she was younger, and it just didn't seem like it should be. Yeah. Another person who we've had on this show, Lisa Marie Presley. Yes. And she was on, I think, was it a year, maybe 2 years ago?
It's been a while.
You know, for some reason, that just hit me hard. She's only 54.
Well, and she was just at the Golden Globes with her mom on Tuesday, recognizing the gentleman that played her father in the documentary that was released this last year. And so they were there, photos were made, and that was her last public appearance just a day and a half before she passed. Found
unresponsive at her home in California, and apparent heart attack. Heart disease runs in the family. Her father died at 42 of a heart attack. Her grandmother had a heart attack, her grandfather had. So, you have a long history of that. But anyways, just sad.
Yeah.
Just sad.
Yeah, tough week.
It has been. Great things happening in one sense, as I talk about my daughter, and then these other very sad stories, quite unfortunate. Before we get to some questions, I want to just get to one of the big issues of the week, and that is the reaction to some of the comments that I have made, both on the show and I think in maybe the live stream, but regarding the election of the speaker and all the hubbub that happened among the Republicans. There was a holdout of 20 of the 221 Republicans, and it took 15 votes over a 5-day period, basically, for Kevin McCarthy to finally be named speaker. A lot of people, well, they're kind of mad at me, so I guess I should owe them an apology that I must have thought that they understood how government works. I'm not trying to be insulting, but let me go through why I think a lot of people thought that their actions were heroic and patriotic. I don't tend to necessarily share that view, and here's why. Kevin McCarthy had already acquiesced to virtually everything that they were asking for, splitting up the budget votes as pieces rather than an omnibus bill. Hey, that's a good idea. I'm for that. Making sure that there's a broader distribution of committee assignments and committee chairmanships, no problem with that. Good idea. There were some other things that were a part of what they had hoped for and wanted, and they got virtually all of it. I think the one big thing that they wanted was that only one person out of the 435 members of the House could stand up and ask for a recall vote on the speaker. That seems a little extreme, but eventually he even gave in to that. Even after that, there were some who still would not vote for him as speaker. Now, they said, well, we can't trust him. Here's what I know. The moment he did get elected speaker, he immediately began to do everything he said he was going to do. He called for a vote to get rid of the 87,000 new IRS agents, launched the powers of the committees to get under investigations. He threw Eric Swalwell, Adam Schiff, and Ilhan Omar off of the committee assignments they had, which was long overdue. I mean, here's a guy, he said, this is what I'm going to do. He did it immediately. So for all the people who said he won't do anything, he proved you wrong. Here's the bigger picture for me, and I hope I can be clear. First of all, when someone disagrees with you, as I disagreed with obviously some of you, that does not make me a rhino or a squish or less than a Republican. I was stunned when people were saying, well, if you didn't support the 10% minority and instead thought that the 90% majority were right, then that makes you a rhino and a squish. Here's the two problems with that. First, who gave anyone the right to determine the authenticity of what a conservative is? When a person says, you're a squish, but I'm not. Really? You're that authoritative? You've never run for anything, never held office, but you get to determine that Mark Levin is a squish, that Newt Gingrich is a rhino. I'm just stunned that a person would say, I'm purer than they are. Where does that come from? I don't mean to be belligerent here. Let me say this as gently as I can muster up to say it. I think that's a very arrogant viewpoint. You can say, I disagree with that person. I think they made a bad judgment. I think we should have done it this way. But to accuse them of not having integrity of their convictions, that's a pretty big deal. That is a big deal. But here's the other reason. And get beyond your anger for just a moment. Get beyond being mad at me for taking the position I did, that it was time to get down to business and quit making a spectacle in the House chamber. Because quite frankly, those kind of things need to happen behind the scenes. You don't take your family arguments in the front yard. It's just not a good view. You need to take your family arguments to your own kitchen table. Because when you and your wife get out in the front yard and you're yelling at each other and the whole neighborhood sees it, there are a lot of neighbors who will never be able to unsee the argument. And that's why we do things discreetly. That's not a matter of being somehow disingenuous, and it's not failing in transparency. It's just having the good sense to be discreet. Here's what made me realize that the 20, some of whom came around, but some never did. Here's where I realized that it wasn't really about the principles. When they openly said, well, I just want to be sure that I get a good committee assignment and that I'm not going to be stripped of a chairmanship or relegated to the backbench and not get the assignments I want. Maybe you didn't catch that, but 30 years of government, here's what I heard. This is really about me. This is about what I get. This isn't about some principle that supersedes me. Because if it's really a principled argument, I'm willing to die on that hill. I'm willing to take my stand and suffer whatever the consequences may be, because it's that important, because it's a principle and it isn't about me. When a person says, what am I going to get? Are you going to promise not to hurt me and punish me? Are you going to promise I'll still get nice committee assignments and I can be a somebody and I'll still get to go on TV and talk to people? Now you reveal something. Inadvertently, perhaps. You've told me that all along it was about your power, not the people's power. That's what I ask you to look at. Because I've seen that movie before, lots of times. When you have a person in the legislature, they never want to get in the majority. They don't work to get in it. That's hard work to get to the majority, because that means you go to all of your colleagues and you get enough of them to join you so you're 50 plus 1. That's really hard work. You know what's not hard work? Is being just one or a handful of voices, tiny minority, that takes 90% of the attention and has no solution, has not done the legwork to go around to all the other members and win their support. That's how you get things done. And when you don't do that, and you just want to gum up the works and say, here's what I'm against, it's easy because you never are responsible for the way things turn out. I kind of like people who are willing to take their stand. They go to enough members of the body to get support and to win the argument and to win the votes. Politics is a simple math game. 50 plus 1 wins. Everything else loses. Pretty simple.
Well, and you've got folks that are literally, while you've been talking, writing in, like Vanessa, who said, "You're a child of God first, Mr. Huckabee, and you are not a rhino." Purple Haze is saying, "I agree to disagree, but no one sees eye to eye 100% of the time." Okay, so that's good.
That's fair.
And folks can continue as we talk. You know, if you don't agree,
Yeah.
that's fine. The chat's a perfect place to talk about it.
Absolutely. You don't have to agree. I just ask you, I don't care what you call me, because I can assure you I'll live through it. But be careful about calling other people less of a pure patriot than you are, because it really presumes 2 things. It presumes you know them better than you probably do, but it also presumes that you have established yourself as the arbiter of what the standard is. So I'm not going to tell you that I may think you're wrong about the processes of government, but I'm not going to say that you hate America or that you hate the Republican Party or you hate the conservative cause because you don't see it like I do. I'll just think maybe a better informed understanding of how to make things happen. And frankly, my point of being in government was never to make noise. It was to make changes. Changes don't happen because you made more noise. Changes happen because you have more votes. That's what I like to see happen. Okay.
All right. Are we ready to dig in?
I think we will.
Okay.
Why
now, you
not?
want to try a clip first? I think we were talking about maybe hitting up clip number 4 over there before we get started, and I've got questions rolling in, sir.
Well, okay. Let's go to, let's see, this one.
This is a little fun.
You think it is?
Yeah.
Okay, let me get to it. This is a wonderful satire. This is, you know, there was a real conflict between Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy. There is a group of internet activists, I guess I will call them, and they do bad lip reading.
Yes.
It's hilarious. They do so many fun things. This is one they put together of a little conversation that may or may not have happened between Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy. Enjoy.
A really rich doctor said you were a bummer.
And I think you don't know algebra.
No, we're talking science, bud.
The science of what? Is that a tiger?
One of your friends promised me I could flick you in your face.
Absolutely, you may not do that.
Hit him in his cringy smirk, for real.
Say any cereal name. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. You're like people in the 12th century.
Why'd he say it like that?
That's pretty funny. Obviously, that's not exactly what they were saying, but there are a bunch of those by this group, bad lip reading, and that one was classic and very, very timely in light of all that we've had going on.
Absolutely.
Well, we mentioned already the 87,000 agents being stripped out of the budget. Doesn't mean that it's a fight that's over. The House could go back and get another vote and get some Republicans to go along, but I cannot imagine any Republican voting for that. And of course, the Senate can't do it by themselves, and the president can't do it by executive order. So as of now, hiring 87,000 agents, Joe Biden says they'd be going after billionaires. That is not true. You know why I tell you that? Billionaires have, warehouses full of accountants and attorneys to make sure they don't pay near the taxes percentage that you do. You know who they go after? They go after gig workers. They're the easiest people to go after. Waiters and waitresses, Uber drivers, musicians, part-time actors. They're the ones who are going to be the easy pickings. And that's who the 87,000 agents would have ultimately come after, not the billionaires. They're too smart. And frankly, they know the tax laws better than any of us. And I don't, by the way, say that what they're doing is wrong. The ones who, there's a difference between avoiding a tax and evading a tax. Tax evasion is a crime. Tax avoidance is just good financial planning.
Yes.
By the way, the very people who are whining about wanting more taxes, they wrote the stupid tax laws that make it easy for people to get around them. So blame Congress, not the people who found a good accountant. Okay, let's take a look. There was, I think, this is a clip. This is, this goes to Speaker McCarthy, recapping the past 5 days. Let's take a look.
We repealed and stripped the funding for 87,000 IRS agents. Government should be here to help you, not to go after you. Be able to protect the unborn. We just protected the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, where the president can no longer deplete it and sell our oil to China. And we opened the House back up for the public.
Hey, be sure and do us a favor and hit the like button. We're trying to get to 1,500 likes before the stream ends because it helps us boost in the YouTube algorithm. That way the YouTube videos get shown to more people. Pop that button. Pop it again and again and again. Like us as much as you can. We told you at the beginning of the live stream, we want to say it again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it already. Hit the notification bell, and when you do that, you'll be advised as to when we're going to be doing special projects just like this one. Joe Biden says that Republicans should not be critical of what's going on at the border because they just won't pass massive amnesty legislation. Here's how he said it.
Our Republican friends and a few Democrats are very critical of what's going on the border, but yet refuse to even look at the detailed document I submitted for the Congress to consider to reform the process completely.
Just make sure you understand when he says reform the process, what he's saying is open amnesty. That's what he's really saying. We get in some questions, I think. Pam, what do we got today?
Absolutely. We're going to start with a super chat this afternoon from Rick Kennison. If Joe Biden had the classified documents in his possession since leaving office as vice president, he should be prosecuted accordingly since he did not have declassification authority.
I mean, maybe that's the strongest answer we could give. He ought to be prosecuted. I'm not sure that even his possession, unless they were abused and handed over to the Chinese or the Russians, is necessarily a criminal prosecution. I think it's a civil issue. And he certainly shouldn't have had them, and he didn't have the power to declassify. Donald Trump did. Joe Biden was not president. This was his vice presidential papers. How he ended up with this stuff is a little bit confusing to begin with.
Yes.
But he did not have the power to declassify. Donald Trump did. But I never thought Donald Trump should be criminally prosecuted for having these documents. And when the Secret Service went down and said, oh, maybe you should put more locks on him, he did. So it was always weird as to why they acted like, well, you know, the house is on fire. Yet in June, that's when they first went down and said, put some more security. He did it. But if it was such an urgent thing, how come they waited till August to conduct the raid?
Right.
It suddenly wasn't very urgent, was it?
Right.
So I don't care if they criminally prosecute Joe Biden for this, probably not necessary. I simply want the same standard applied to him as applied to Trump. So if they criminally prosecute Trump, you bet they ought to criminally prosecute Joe Biden.
Well,
what I would like to see is a pre-dawn raid on his private residence.
Right. Well, we've got a timing issue, too, because what would have happened if these documents, if we had known about them and they were released, because, right, they knew about this before the midterm elections.
6 days.
Right?
Yeah, 6 days before the election is when they found out that Biden had the classified documents. Yeah. Merrick Garland did not go to have a press conference and say anything about it. No one did. No one knew until this week.
Right.
And that is a problem because, again, it's a double standard. Okay.
Absolutely. Another super chat. David White, a bill in Congress should never be larger than a small town newspaper. You should be able to read it in less than an hour and understand it.
I agree, David. And by the way, that is one of the reforms that members of Congress have put in place and McCarthy has insisted upon, is that you cannot have these 4,000-page bills thrown at the members and told you have less than 24 hours to digest it and vote on it. That's outrageous.
Okay, so we do have some comments about the speaker fight. We talked a little bit about that, and you had some splaining you did earlier. All right, this one from Nasanya says he did it because he was under pressure. Stop promoting McCarthy. You always cover under and never want to fight against the establishment.
Really? You must not know much about my political career to say I never want to fight. And it's that kind of comment that bothers me the most. Do a little homework, do a little research, and see that my entire political life has basically been fighting the very establishment that I ran against for the first time back in 1992. And every year that I was in office, if you don't think I was fighting an establishment, you have no idea of the political climate of Clinton's Arkansas that I walked into. So say a lot of things about me, but to say that I didn't fight the establishment would be laughable to the people who had front row seats during my tenure as both a lieutenant governor and as a governor and beyond.
Diana Coleman is asking, the bigger picture and concern is, will McCarthy continue to work for us, or will he buckle again?
I can't predict what he will do. I'm very happy what he's doing so far, and I think every true conservative should be. But if he goes rogue and starts, bending to the will of the Washington donor class, okay. One of the concessions that he made was that one single member of the House can stand up and call for a confidence vote. So it's easier than probably it's ever been to get rid of the Speaker. So there you go.
All right, going to continue down this path. One more question or a comment. Governor, I will never agree with you on this. This is from Gary Cray.
Okay.
I don't believe McCarthy behaves the way he did on day one without that fight. Oh, well, still a fan and hugely happy about my new gov, your great daughter.
Well,
okay, so
that's very kind. And you don't have to agree with me. All I would ask is that in the disagreement, be careful not to say that, and Gary didn't, and I want to compliment him for that. The ones that get to me are the ones who suddenly declare everyone who disagrees with them as being less patriotic. That's where I find offense.
Understood.
Okay.
All right. John Johnston, changing the subject, going back to those Biden documents. Since the documents were unsecured, inquiring minds want to know who else looked at them.
Yeah, that's a good question. And let's hope the special prosecutor finds out. I don't have much hope in that special prosecutor. He's not considered the sharpest knife in the drawer. He was a part of Mueller's team. This is not a guy who is unbiased. So I'm not surprised that this is the kind of person who was picked to be the special counsel. The guy they got to go against Trump is a virulent anti-Trump guy, hates Trump. Naturally, they pick him. So it'll be interesting. We've got some footage on this document release. Joe Biden admitting on TV that he did, in fact, have those documents.
I realized there were several classified documents in that box, and they did what they should have done. They immediately called the archives, turned them over to the archives, and I was briefed about this discovery and surprised to learn that there were any government records that were taken there to that office. But I don't know what's in the documents. My lawyers have not suggested I ask what documents they were.
Here's what I think. He was surprised. Now, this was the first round. How surprised was he to find out they were in the garage sitting next to his Corvette? I think that he took the Gomer Pyle approach. Surprise, surprise, surprise. And that's what we kind of saw this week. I think it's interesting. The White House was scrambling to try to explain this. And poor Karine Jean-Pierre, she basically had a meltdown over it.
These documents were discovered on November 2nd. This didn't become public until my colleagues at CBS News reported this on Monday. That's more than 2 months later. Why was the public not informed while the White House prepared its PR response for 2 months?
Again, this was under review. This is under review by the Department of Justice. I'm not going to go beyond what the president shared yesterday. I'm not going to go beyond what my colleagues at the White House Counsel shared with all of you as well.
I'm not going to go beyond. So let me be clear. Let me say it again. But she doesn't say it again because she's never said it the first time. We don't get answers. It's just been frustrating. But the good news is you're still a citizen of the United States of America, and you can ask all the questions you want. And you can leave a few for us in the comments section. We'll read them even after the show. Now, if you haven't done it already, Why wait any longer? Subscribe to the channel and do it right now, because YouTube just don't do us any favors in showing our content to people. So the best way that you can get all of our content out, hit that subscription button and the notification bell. Then click on the channel. We've got a lot of other content for you throughout the week, but you've got to search the channel because YouTube won't show it to you unless you hit the notification bell. We're so glad you joined us. Got a great show lined up this weekend on the Huckabee Show. You want to know what's going on with it? Watch this, we'll tell you.
This week on Huckabee, Carrie Lake on how America moves forward.
And you'll want to stay tuned for this one, trust me.
Actor and director Kevin Sorbo. Incredible speed painting by Splat Experience. Contemporary Christian artist Tasha Layton. Watch Huckabee on Saturday at 8, 7 Central and again on Sunday at 9, 8 Central right here on TBN.